Good morning, good afternoon to all the participants who have joined us. My name is Michel Demar and I chair CICA's working group on the good preparation of projects. For those who do not know CICA, CICA is the World Construction Association to bring together construction contractors worldwide, and we partner with other international organizations. To name a few, PIAC for road authorities, FIDIC for the consulting industry, multilateral development banks, and many others. Our objective is to improve the general framework for effective implementation of sustainable construction projects in terms of governance, design, and procurement. The theme of our webinar today is Rethinking Project Preparation, the strategic role of contractors in planning and design. While consulting engineers have played a key role in project preparation for a long time, and they will continue to do so, we witness the emergence of new governance and procurement procedures that give a wider role to contractors in this field. This webinar does not intend to present these new formal procedures, which are sometimes summarized as collaborative delivery models, CDMs, that apply mainly to large contracts, more often but not exclusively in industrialized countries. We have a fellow organization named EIC, European International Contractors, that recently published a position paper on CDMs, collaborative delivery models, that you may find of interest should you wish to get acquainted with the CDM's terminology and detailed procedures. But today our webinar would rather insist on the change of mindset that has appeared in recent times in many instances in the practices of clients and multilateral development banks, consisting in promoting an earlier involvement of contractors in the life of the project, notably by an early market engagement, and importantly, regardless of the country and the complexity of the project. To discuss this, let me first introduce our first speaker today, Jean-Jacques Verdeau. He's the procurement manager for Latin America and the Caribbean at the World Bank. He has had a long career at the World Bank, but he still took a break as procurement manager with the European Investment Bank. So he has a wide international experience. Jean-Jacques will be our first speaker. Let me give a couple of recommendations for the participants. You're probably used to doing that. Please put your computer on mute if you do not have to speak. Use the chat to ask specific questions, indicating whom you want to answer them. And Ondine will collect the questions. We will endeavor to answer as concisely as possible. And during the Q&A session, you will also have some opportunities to be given the floor. Just raise your hand and we will give you the floor, but only for short questions, please, not speeches. Finally, this webinar, like all CICA's webinars, will be recorded on CICA's YouTube channel so that you may be able to transfer it or rehear it if you find it useful. Now, Jean-Jacques, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Michel. I hope that you hear me well. Again, good afternoon for maybe most of you, or good morning. I mean, for me and the one in that part of the hemisphere, because, you know, I am based in Panama, and so I am the procurement manager, Michel was saying, for bank operation in Latin America and the Caribbean. As Michel said, I took a break from the World Bank, but it was a very active break, I have to say, with the European Investment Bank. So I learned a lot, and it gave me the opportunity to see a perspective from different banks, which are not very, very different, actually, but obviously operating in very sometimes different environments. So I am going to touch upon what Michel just said about market engagement. But first of all, let me start with presenting, maybe a little bit the World Bank, what we are doing, a little bit the portfolio very, very quickly. So the World Bank is, supposedly the leading, development organization in terms of financing, obviously in terms of outreach, because we have more than 180 member countries. Actually, the World Bank is that different institution. One part is called the World Bank, which is mainly sovereign loan and sovereign grants. We have the other big institution, I would say, which is IFC, which is actually an institution that deal with the private sector, that's the private arm, actually, the World Bank. And we have two other institutions, one called the MIGA, which deal with guarantee, and the other one is ICSID, which is for arbitration purposes. So that's the World Bank group. So when it comes to the World Bank, we are obviously, our mission is, development, and always development. So with different focus, depending on the time, and depending sometimes on the president, I have to say. But it's always obviously focus on that, and we do that, implementing projects. And how we implement projects is essentially through investment project. And investment project means most of the time contracts and procurement of contracts and procurement of big contracts. So when I say that, a little bit of numbers, the World Bank, the active portfolio of the World Bank that we have on the book right now is around 350 billion US dollars. Out of that, we have more or less $250 billion that are investment projects that lead most of them to what we call procurable activities. That means that they are implementing through contracts that are procured by our borrowers and implementing agency that are our clients. For the Latin America and the Caribbean right now, we are shy of 20 billion US dollars. It goes from very small contracts to very huge contracts. Metro, for instance, that's the one on the book, and we have two big contracts project going on, which is a metro in Bogota. We have extension of metro in Brazil, and we have also a water project that we are going to finance also in Colombia with what we call the Aqueducto, which is a huge contract, several billions US dollars in terms of capex. So that's what we do, and so the question is, the countries actually could not do whatever they want when it comes to procurement. They have to follow World Bank procurement regulation that are actually on the web, and you could see, and so that's the legal framework. Last number, always important to say, out of most of the contract we finance, 5 or 6% of the contracts are advertised internationally and follow not only rules and principles, but follow standard billing documents that are imposed by the bank to our clients. These 5 or 6% of contract represent, in terms of value, 70% of the value. So we have few contracts that represent high value in terms of contracts. So let's talk a little bit of what is I would say the countryside when it comes to market engagement and what's going on in most, if not all, our developing countries. I have to say that we have a kind of wall. I'm not sure it's a Berlin Wall or whatever. Sometimes it looks like a Berlin Wall. For those of you who are old enough, that is completely, very risky to cross. That exists actually between our borrowers, our clients, and the private sector. I used to say that that's the reality, at least in my region, for at least one country that I know very well. It is prohibited to talk to the private sector at any cost, at any time, before or during the procurement process. If you do that, you go in jail. At least it was with the former government. I don't know, the new government is going to change the rules of the game, but it's a rule and a real wall. And it's very difficult to engage with the private sector for borrowers. That has to do, again, sometimes with the legal framework. It has to do with the environment. It could be the legal, the control environment. I mean, the Latin America is very known actually for being very control, I would say, centered. There is some state within the state in most of Latin American countries that are, for instance, called the Contraria General de la República, which have, are very keen to make sure that, they keep this wall and this line between the private sector and the borrowers. There is sometimes a question of culture, there's a question of fear, there is a question of also a perception of corruption. I'm not talking only for Latin America, I'm talking for a lot of our client countries, and you may have experienced that. Obviously, the situation creates a not ideal situation. I have been a procurement officer myself for the Ministry of Finance in France a long time ago. And obviously, in some contracts, talking to the private sector was part of the game. I know that's not always the case, even, in I would say, developed countries, but, participating to fair and having an idea about what is the market is part of the job. That is not the case with our borrowers. That creates a lot of issues and a lot of problems in terms of implementation, in terms of quality. There is an inadequation between actually the needs of the borrowers and the bids they receive, because obviously, as you do not talk to the private sector, you do not really know necessarily the latest product, the latest specification, what really you need, and how to adequate. I mean, to have an adequation between the needs and obviously what the market has to offer. We have an issue, obviously, for firms and international firms who are are informed very lately in the process. I mean, they are informed when the publication, the advertisement is done, and it's much too late for a lot of international firms that have to position themselves, obviously, depending on different, I would say, factors. We have, obviously, this issue of that result actually, as it is maybe it's always a surprise sometimes for our borrowers, for a lack of competition. So from large international international processes, we could see a lack of competition, and lack of competition for companies that take a lot of risk actually and look very much in the risk. It's less a problem for some companies, I have to say, coming from some countries that the risk may not be that big an issue, and I'm not going to go to that field, but for certain companies coming from certain countries, obviously, they are less risk averse because usually they have the backing of their government. And we ended up actually with a lot of issue when it comes to procurement. We issue also with delays because of this inadequation, because of the fact that we don't have the best solution and the best products, as a result of this lack of dialogue. And I have to say the procurement policy of the bank allows this dialogue. That's part of the policy. We have competitive dialogue. We have all these issues in our policy. So that's allowed, but that's not implemented. And that creates a lot of problem. And one of the main problems we had, that was the lack of competition, the fact that we don't have the best product and the best services. And obviously that creates, for a development agency or development institution like the World Bank, we are not fulfilling our mission if our borrowers do not have access to the best products, the best firms, and the best services, and not necessarily at the best price at the end of the day. So we had to take some measures. That's what we call the procurement change program. That was decided. That was decided late 2024, implemented in March 2025, and as part of that, we have one of the main issue. We have different measures. Some of you may have heard about, the issue of rated criteria. So the mandatory use of rated criteria for at least now 50% for all international processes. That's one of the measures. We have other measures like the use of local laborers as mandatory use of local labor. So we have different measures that have been taken, as part of this change program. And one of the main measures is early market engagement. So early market engagement is putting in our policy, as part of our policy, the obligation for the borrowers to engage with the market. I have to see, that's a very, very welcome development because it's part of the policy. So being part of the policy, that means that is something that is imposed on our clients and our borrowers. You have to know that our loan agreement, grant agreements are actually international treaties. As part, for those of you who are lawyers, being an international treaty, that means that they supersede any national law. So that's an obligation. But sometimes it's easy to say, to do. Since we have put that in place, the bank, and I know that some of my team is connected today, the bank in LAC, but also in other regions, have made sure that we try for the borrowers to engage with the private sector. What we have done most of the time, and I have to acknowledge that as part of the bank, is that we have been very active, the bank, to inform, first of all, the private sector of that opportunity. And we try as much as we could to be, should I say, the middleman, or I don't know what, between the borrower and the implementing agency, the private sector. It works very well when we are able to have, the borrower on board. But still, I think that we have issue and we have problems. And the problem has to do again with the fact that we try, the bank is doing, I think, its job. I think we could do even more. That's what we are talking about starting in September, going a step further, that means to be focused more on certain processes, to be focused on more projects. We are trying to identify companies ahead of time. We are trying to, again, organize events with the borrowers and to have that for certain projects. It went very well for some of the projects. We had one project I have in mind, or one contract that was actually terminated, and with one only that was terminated, and it was with a firm that was the only firm that bid at the time. There was a re-advertising, and we did this, this approach to project, making sure that we were getting as much information ahead of time, and for a contract that ended up with only one firm at the beginning, the re-advertising of the firm, of the process after it was terminated, led actually to have 4 different firms or that actually participate. One of them actually, I think, was French. It was for Saint Martin. So the Dutch part of Saint Martin. We had very, very diverse supplier that did actually apply. That was a very, very well, and it's not the only one. We had that in Salvador and things. So we have ourselves to push, but still we are not there, to say, in the fact that we have to do that part of the job ourselves, the World Bank. And I have to say, it's not only the World Bank, and you may have heard, I mentioned the EIB. EIB is part of it. The other banks are part of it. The head of procurement, that I think next meeting actually is in Paris in September, and the working group on business engagements, that all the banks are on board on that. So it's not only the World Bank, it's also the other banks. I know that the EIB, ABRD have their own initiative at some point. Inter-American Bank has their name, but you have to know that all the banks are collaborating in that aspect. Yeah, but we are not there yet in terms of making that possible. That means that the private sector has access to early information, has access to borrowers early with the process. And that's an issue, and that's a challenge. And I'm very transparent and honest about that. It's difficult for us to make that, change. We try, again, to be very specific. We have to change the mentality. Sometimes we have to change, sometimes the legal framework. I'm mentioning the fact that in some countries it's prohibited to talk to the private sector, whatever part of the process, which is even kind of crazy when you talk about clarification, thing like that. But I have to tell that's the reality. We have ourselves in LAC, and we try to expand that globally, engage in what we call the professionalization of the procurement function. Why it is important? Because obviously a lot of procurement professionals fear to engage with the private sector, and we want to get them a little bit immune from that fear, immune from the environment, and we try to build a profession to make sure that we have professionals that understand that is really for the good, to engage with the private sector early on in the process, as soon as they want to identify even their needs, because the inadequation between the needs and the bid sometimes is absolutely tremendous in a lot of these processes. We are talking about contract engagement and contractor engagement early on. I want, to finish on that part. If you have any question, you are welcome. On the issue of the contractor themselves, the ones that win the contracts. We are talking of early market engagement. What we are talking now, it's contractor engagement. We have to say that one of the big deterrents to some of the firms, international firms. And I have to say that, to be very, very frank, and to say what we had this procurement change program, it has to do with a lot of firms, and some of you may be a representative of these firms, that actually left our government procurement market, the one that is financed by the multilateral development banks. One of the issues has to do also with contract implementation. It's not only market engagement early on, it's also about contractor engagement and the fact that the firms have a problem to be heard before the process starts, but also during contract implementation. And we have a lot of issue in terms of dispute payments. That's a big issue. And obviously, when the risk committee is gathering to understand what they have to do with some countries, whether they will engage, obviously that is to be taken into account. We try to change that, at least inside the bank, because the bank used to be a complete third party to contracts, and to say, it's not our problem. That's now a contract between a borrower, between an implementing agency, and although we are financing and a firm, we try to change that. We try to be engaged also in contract implementation. That's very important. And you have to know, and that's a little bit a call, that not only part of the policy is early market engagement, but now part of the policy, and actually for a long time, in internal policy of the bank has a role to play when there is dispute. And if you hear from some of my colleagues, and sometimes from my legal department, I was at the legal department at some point, so I take a little bit the blame also. But the bank, although not a party to a contract, is an actor to help with these issues. And maybe the RDF and Anne is connected, but obviously, if we could help with disputes early on, to know that we have dispute board, on board, that is very, useful. But also, if we could help with dispute, we are there. And I think that's a little bit, if I would say, the next frontier for the bank. That means that we are trying to do early market engagement. We have to be much more involved in contract implementation. That's absolutely key. We have done that. In Panama, we tried to do that in Panama on a recent case we had. We try our best. Sometimes it's very difficult. You have to know that sometimes you have a change in government, and the change in government is not only a change in government; it's changing everything, even in contracts. Sometimes the change are not that radical in terms of policy. Political game. But they consider that whatever was done by the former government was bad, and so they are not going to. They want to terminate the contract. They want to change the whole picture, and that's something that actually affects our project. So again, we have made a lot of progress. I'm very proud of my team, I have to say, because I know they are connected of what we have done with early market engagement and with contractors. Again, we could do more. I hope we will be able to do more with our borrowers, but you must know, if you are presenting a private sector, that early market engagement is part of the policy, bank policy. So that's not an option for our clients. And you may consider, reminding everyone, I want to say reminding sometimes the bank, but the borrower, that there is an obligation there. I don't remember exactly what is the section in our policy, but if you have to go to the procurement regulation on what we call IPF, investment project financing for borrowers, in the last version, it was March and then September, so last version, September 2025, you will see this issue. So it's part of the policy. And I hope again that also we will expand that to contractor engagement and to make sure that we will be able to make the life easier and business easier for international contractor, because as I said, I use usually a term of ménage à trois, but it's a little bit, overused now. So I have to say that now, the bank, the board, and the private sector are absolutely necessary to make our project implemented. And I have to say now we have to be free to dance. That will be my new expression, free to dance, to make that happen. So again, if you have any question, I'm happy to respond to any of your question. I want to thank again Michel and Dean, all the team. I see Richard also, all the team from CICA for inviting us. And again, that's not only a World Bank policies, that's not only our region, that's also the other banks. So if I may, I want to say that I express myself today on behalf of all the banks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jean-Jacques. Maybe we can, if there are some questions from the floor, we can maybe take them right away. Ondine, have you spotted anything?
No questions in the chat, but maybe the audience can just, people can raise their hands and ask short questions.
Yes, you know how to do that. You raise your hand and we give you the floor. Anyone? No? Okay, so we're going to you will have some more opportunities at the end of this session. Now, I will not give the floor, I will take the floor, because our colleague Javier Pascual, who is Director for Business Development and Pre-Construction at Ferrovial Construction US and Canada, had a last-minute constraint and he's not able to join us for this webinar. That's a pity because he has more than 20 years of experience in North America. And he participated in, as you can see on the slide, he participated in a webinar that CICA organized last month on May 19th, but that was more focused on PPPs, public-private partnerships, or P3s, as they named them in North America. And he allowed me to pick up one slide of his presentation to illustrate the changes that he has perceived in the United States, and the trends, the new trends he has observed in this country. And actually, I met Javier Pascual beginning of this year in January in Washington, D.C. I was attending the Transportation Research Board, and Javier participated in a session dedicated to the United States, and the title of the session was where are we now with P3s and what is the future road of P3s? And in this session, he made an interesting comment that I found appropriate for today's webinar, which is that in those states in the United States that have engaged in public-private partnerships, that's not all states in the United States, but there are a number that have engaged in such types of contracts. DOTs, the Department of Transportation, have been familiar now with the new procedures that obviously require that there is some even more than a market engagement. There has to be a dialogue between the would-be concessionaire, the financiers, and the strange remark that Javier made was that for those states that have committed into P3 for the last decades, DOTs have now become accustomed to consulting with the industry, with the contracting industry, ahead of the projects and ahead of the procurement, even for traditional projects, not necessarily PPPs, but they have considered that there was an added value to consulting with the contractors ahead of the project procurement itself. And so he has illustrated this change in the slide that is presented now, making a difference on the process and delivery as it was adopted formally. That's in the column which shows then owner, and which is different from what happens now. And I think this is very interesting because it also mentions the changes that contractors are faced with. Formerly, we spoke about one-off projects. That was a project, it was an end in itself, and when it was over, then people would go to another project. Now it's a bit different, and some states have adopted a programmatic approach because they want to be consistent in the series of projects that they launch, and they want to bring more visibility also to the private sector, for the private sector to know what is ahead and what they may count on in the future of contracting. Decisions used to be one-sided. Javier has an expression, he said the project were DOT-centered. The DOT was responsible for everything. Now there is much more public consultation and buy-in from a variety of stakeholders. DOTs were also self-sufficient and doing their work in-house, but now they're used to consulting with multidisciplinary advisors in a variety of fields, not only the contracting industry, but also specialists of environment, of water, of maybe of climate. And eventually they were used to using a single procurement method, the traditional design bid build method, and now they're used to using more blended delivery models. So this is a change that is perceived, again, not in all states, but in many states that have already experience with public-private partnerships, and they have found an added value in consulting with the contracting industry. So I'm sorry that Javier was not able to make this presentation himself. I hope I have not altered his views on the practices that and the change in practice trends that now can be seen in the United States. But I think he brought a very interesting argument to the table about the consultation of the industry ahead of projects. We are now going to listen to our third speaker. Let me introduce, I want to check whether Florent Johnson.
Yes, he's here.
Is here.
Yes, I've joined him. I'm there.
Okay, good. Florent. So let me introduce Florent very quickly. Florent Janssen is an infrastructure manager with the French company Eiffage Concessions. Florent graduated École Polytechnique and École Nationale des Ponts et Chaussées. After being active for 10 years in infrastructure work in France, mainly on PPPs and concession projects, Florent joined the Eiffage Group in 2012 to work on a large project of the high-speed railway west of France. For those who know, Bretagne, Pays de Loire, that's the name of the high-speed railway. A big PPP project in the range of 3 billion euros. Florent today is now infrastructure manager for Eiffage Concessions, in charge of all kinds of infrastructure projects, rail, road, and port projects. Florent is going to speak about a very unique project in France at the motorway A79. Florent, the floor is yours. You probably have a PowerPoint presentation, I guess.
Yes. Thank you, Michel, for the introduction, and hello everyone. Because I'm sorry for being late. I couldn't join on time, but I could still hear the end of the presentation of Jean-Jacques and the speech from Michel regarding the US market and DOTs. Let me share the presentation I have prepared. This is it. I'll put it in full screen. It will be better for everyone. Do you have it?
Not yet.
Do you have the presentation on your screens?
No.
Not
At
yet.
least,
Not yet.
I cannot see it.
Hovering around. Should be okay. I hope so. Not yet. It's strange.
Maybe, Florent, you can turn off your camera so you have more connection. Maybe it's that.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can share it
You
if you
don't
want.
to see me, but
Do you have the presentation, Andine?
no, I have
an
error message. Let me try again. Yeah, maybe it will be better.
Okay.
Yeah, I think to try to share it. You have the slide.
Good.
Yeah.
We now have it.
You can just tell me next when you want.
So while Andine is sharing the presentation, let me start. So after the presentation of Jean-Jacques, especially was focusing on the early contractor involvement at the very beginning or ahead of the procurement or tender process. So it's coming. Yeah. So I will talk more about early contract. Yeah, actually, I don't have it on my screen. I have a white screen, but if everyone else has it, that's fine. I know the presentation.
Yeah, we can see it on our side.
Maybe it will arrive later. So I will more focus on early contractor engagement. Let's say after award of the project, so during the design construction phase. And for that, I will take as an example the A79 motorway project.
Florent, I'm sorry, we have a problem with the sound. The sound is not good.
Station project. So obviously, this type of scheme.
Yeah.
So everything is fine.
The sound is not good. We hardly can hear you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can fix it.
Very well, but I'll try to.
You can hear me, but we cannot hear you very well.
Is it better now?
It sounds like.
It
Go
sounds
ahead.
like. Sorry for that. Yeah, is it good now? Can you hear me?
Yes,
It's better
perfect.
now.
Okay, let's hope it will last. So I don't know when you lost me, but the point was just saying that now we'll be focusing on the early contractor engagement after award of the project, and in that case in a specific project, which is the A79 motorway project. So this is a concession project. So as such, it's actually a good type of project for early contractor engagement, as the contractor, let's call it the contractor, is not only in charge of construction, but also financing, design, build, and also operation and maintenance. So what are we talking about? So this is a 88 motorway stretch in the middle of France on a east-west route going from Switzerland to the Atlantic coast. It was actually the scope of the project was about widening an existing two-lane road, which was with a lot of heavy goods vehicle traffic and also a lot of accidents, and also a significant number of deaths every year. So there was a high challenge on improving the safety on this stretch. The cost, the capex cost was over 550 million euros. And it was implemented through a concession contract of 48 years. You can move to the following one, and in. So the way to do it, and the way actually we tend to deliver concession project within Eiffage is to propose a quite integrated delivery model with actually Eiffage at the various levels of the organization. So Eiffage is on this project specifically is the only shareholder of the SPV in charge of the concessionaire. Eiffage, so it's 100% shareholding by Eiffage. The construction team is also made up of a number of subsidiaries of Eiffage in earthworks, civil works, and also the systems. And the operation and maintenance is also delivered by a subsidiary of Eiffage, APRR, which is actually the operator of a large part of the French motorway network. What was specific on this project? It's and actually you can probably move to the following slide, Andine. What was specific on this project on the financing side is that Eiffage not only provided 100% of the equity, but also 100% of the debt. It was actually a corporate debt, meaning that we didn't involve any commercial bank on that project. So as you can see, you have the Eiffage logo at all the levels of the organization, which actually brings more flexibility or agility to actually fasten the decision-making process at the various stages of the project, and allows a smooth delivery of the project, even when we came across some challenges, difficulties whatsoever. And actually the construction period of this motorway actually started with the COVID-19 crisis. So obviously we had to make some swift decision to deal with that. I have to mention that we don't always provide the full depth of the project with our own funds, but on this specific project, considering the fast track planning and the high challenges, we decided to make this happen as such. So obviously the group as a whole was responsible for all the risks of the project, be it traffic risk for the concessionaire, construction risk for the EPC contractor, or operation and maintenance risk for the O&M-Co. So this is basically the very simplified scheme of the financing, and so you have equity and debt, and then the capex and opex that are then forwarded to the EPC contractor and the O&M-Co, and the revenues are coming only from the traffic, because for the toll collection, which is this is actually also a specific point to be worth mentioning, which is the fact that on this project we eventually didn't ask for any subsidy from the state. At the beginning of the tender process, it was a possibility. We could have asked for a subsidy, and on some French motorway concessions it can be needed, but on this one we managed to balance all the financing without any public subsidy, which was actually quite useful for the acceptability of the project, because on this one you are turning a two-lane free road into a toll, a four-lane, which is better, but actually with a four-lane motorway, but with a toll. So obviously for local users who are used to drive for free, it was not easy to accept the change. Had we needed a public subsidy, it would have been even worse to explain, because you get money from the state and you ask the users to pay. But avoiding those public subsidy allowed us to enhance the acceptability for the drivers and the local people. You can move to the following one. So I will just focus on a number of points that actually illustrate either the reason for early contractor engagement, and also the benefit of this early contractor engagement. For example, in terms of because having this global project as a whole within our group, and being responsible for a very large scope of the project, allowed us to make a number of decisions very early in the process, in terms of design, in terms also of construction methods. For example, the first picture you can see 1.7 conveyor belt to bring rocks material on the site from a nearby quarry. Obviously, this was very beneficial to avoid CO2 emissions, also traffic disturbance and damages to the local roads. We also mentioned the free flow toll system, which was actually a possibility offered in the tender process, but it was actually the first time that it was implemented in France. So obviously it was a challenge. But we clearly saw right from the beginning the benefit of investing in this system from the very beginning, because you avoid the land acquisition and also the construction costs linked to the traditional toll plazas. We also focused quite a lot on a number of environmental commitments with acoustic barriers, rainwater treatment basins, some eco bridges, as the one you can see on the sub picture. We also insisted a lot on reusing the materials, either excavated materials or asphalt on the existing road. And we also insisted a lot on the local socio-economic benefits, going far beyond the requirement of the contract in terms of working hours for unemployed or disabled, or share of the works dedicated to local companies. To mention only a few of those benefits. You can move them. As I mentioned earlier, we had a very challenging deadline because of the difficulties with the existing road. I mentioned the number of accidents and of deaths every year. We were close to 10 deaths per year, so it was really urgent to improve the safety of this infrastructure. So clearly, the timeline of the project was a very important part of the evaluation of the bids, and we clearly made the choice to fast track the delivery of the construction of this motorway, and we committed to a less than two years construction period, which was very challenging, and which required to start very early. And actually we started a number of activities, obviously not works, but we started a number of design activities and administrative procedures activities right from preferred bidder designation, which was actually at risk for us, but we started actually in summer 2019 with a contract that was actually signed only in March 2020. So during around 9 months we were engaging design activities, administrative files and so on at risk, but it allowed us to start the works right after the signature of the contract in March 2020, but obviously we had to stop quite early because in March 2020, you may remember that we had COVID-19. Actually, we didn't stop completely. We managed to keep on working, but obviously there was some disturbance. And at the end, I have to say that the 23.5 months were increased by 8 months after a negotiation and with our client, because obviously we couldn't work properly during the COVID crisis. So beyond this anticipation in some activities before contract signature, we also benefited from the integration of the design and building construction activities with a dedicated organization, with a very close collaboration between the design team, which was partly internal and partly coming from engineering companies. So this design team was working very closely with the construction team to actually both fast track the timeline between design and construction and overlap actually those two activities, and also by taking into account in the design the constructability issues and to bring, for example, some prefabrication bridges or to bring an extensive use of precast element to fast track the construction. So yes, you can move and I think I have to finish quickly if we want to give some time to question. But actually we are reaching the end. Some key takeaways from about this this early involvement of the contractor that creates value. Obviously, the integrated DBF OM model is key. I just mentioned it earlier. If you don't put all the activities within under one hat, it's more difficult to fast track and to overlap activities, especially design and construction activities. The early contractor involvement, obviously, from either during the tender period when the future contractor can develop a number of studies and of innovation and so on, and as I mentioned, allowing him to also start some activities between preferred bidder designation and formal contract signature, and then optimize on the resilient project. This financial autonomy of the concessionaire, and especially in the case where Eiffage is providing all the financing, obviously it allows the contractor to react proactively to any challenges, any difficulties that can be encountered especially during the construction period. So so I think this is a good example of going beyond the traditional roles of owner, designer, and contractor. Bringing all those activities together actually brings value for all the stakeholders, and this is a good thing. You can see below the motorway that is now open. Actually, this was a little bit before the end of the construction period because we still have the former bridge of the former two-lane road, which is now demolished. But this is more or less what it looks like today. And I think we are at the end, but obviously I'm here to answer any kind of question.
Thank you very much, Florent.
You're welcome.
I think it's worth outlining that Eiffage is quite a cheeky company because the financing you described, which is a kind of corporate management all the way, is the one that your company also adopted for the Viaduc de Millau, which was
but I think no,
if I'm not mistaken.
I think we had commercial banks at least at the beginning on the Millau Viaduc, but we actually
had
like
them for refinancing, yes, but in the beginning you didn't have them. Okay, so you're used to these kind of challenges at Eiffage, which is remarkable. Now, we have some questions. We have one from Jean-Jacques Verdeau. Jean-Jacques, raise his hand. The floor is yours, Jean-Jacques.
Yes, no, I mean, it's about contractor engagement, but with obviously the contracting authorities and the government. But obviously, what raised my interest there is the fact that it's 2 times the ways that was actually transformed into a highway, paving highway with a toll. So I was wondering, I could imagine. I mean, I'm French too, so I know how the French are reacting. I could imagine that from a social perspective, that was a little bit of a challenge, because I remember, at the time several years ago when they were putting toll, I think on a heavy load of trucks and even tractors. I mean, from that didn't go very well from a social perspective. So I would like to know who was in charge of the social engagement, I would say. So I mean, who was in charge to engage with local authorities? I mean, municipalities and region, things like that. Was it? I mean, you were really in charge of it, or it went through the contracting authorities? I mean, it goes a little bit beyond just the contractor, but I am interested to know a little bit, how you dealt with that. Thank you.
Mm. Yes, of course. Yeah, actually, it's. I would say it's more or less shared. Actually, the early. The early procedures are engaged by the public authority, actually the French state in that case, and actually what we call the public utility license or declaration was actually done ahead of the procurement process by the French state, and this is, I guess, the only administrative authorization that was actually anticipated by the state, and it's actually clearly linked to their role that can't completely delegate to a private party, because it's about public utility. So this one was obtained ahead of the tender process, and then we had to prepare and to obtain all the other authorizations, and especially the environmental authorizations. And yeah, obviously, we had to engage with local communities and so on, to explain the process and to make sure that there is sufficient support to get the approval, and not to have any kind of recourse or whatsoever, because we are responsible for obtaining and maintaining those environmental licenses. And the more recent news in France about motorway projects shows that especially on another project in the south of France, it has been very difficult, because due to let's say the lack of public acceptability of this other project, the concessionaire lost his environmental license due to a recourse, and then there was a number of other developments, but it's not easy. On this one, obviously, we were, say, lucky, because the public acceptability was rather high due to the fact that there were a lot of accidents and deaths on this road. So obviously, it was difficult for any people to reject the need for this kind of motorway urgently. And then the link between urgency and concessions and then toll was more or less accepted.
May I add something, Florent? I understand you also had some specific arrangements with nearby residents to have some lighter toll fares, or even some free sections.
Yeah. You're right, and this was actually part of our bid, actually, because we were supposed to propose a fare policy and a toll policy, and actually what we identified as useful to foster acceptability and still having a balanced financing, was to insert some toll-free sections, which was easy to insert due to the free flow system, because you put some gantry here and there, and then if you decide to make the section free, it's quite easy. And also we offered to local residents so they could subscribe to a specific offer that gave them some toll reductions. So yeah, so obviously this was helpful to foster local acceptability.
Another question from Mr. Hayek.
Yes, hi. I'm Ziad Alexandre Hayek. I'm the president of WAP, the World Association of PPP Units and Professionals. And so happens the PPP topic is one very dear to my heart. So I have a couple of comments to make. One is that Eiffage is, perhaps an exception to the rule in that it is willing to be both a contractor and an operator. There are very few companies like that in the world, some of them mainly French, but the rest of the world, contractors are typically not operators. And so it is very interesting, the topic of today's conversation, the involvement of contractors in planning and design, I believe is very important in many, many aspects. But I would say especially one important aspect is the exit. How is the contractor going to be part of the SPV consortium and yet not stick around for 30 years with their capital committed for a 30-year project? How can a contractor come into the SPV and as soon as the construction is done and the bank loan is refinanced, have an exit strategy and exit from the equity stake, if they want to, equity stake of the SPV. So there are many ways to do that, but that's topic for another webinar sometime. But I think this is something that really we should talk about, all of us, the financial aspect. The other comment I want to make is that, interestingly, and it's some free sections of the highway, I think is a great idea. But also, we're encouraging countries more and more to look at the German A model, or Model A, where it is the commercial vehicles that pay the toll, but not the passenger vehicles. And typically that reduces a lot of the political opposition to toll roads. Because as long as it's some other company that's paying and not me, then that's okay, even though the cost is indirect and eventually is borne by everybody. So anyway, two thoughts wanted to contribute.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, and I fully support. And yeah, obviously there is a French specificity on those French groups who have both construction activities and concessionaire activities. This is our case at Eiffage, but we are not the only one in France. But obviously it's clearly separated. I mean, we have a concession branch, which business is to develop a long-term portfolio, and we have some construction branches, which business is to do some construction and then to close the deal and to move to another deal. And this is what they do. I mean, the EPC contractor it's our colleagues from the other branches, and they are when the construction is over, it's over. I mean, and us, I'm part of Eiffage Concessions. We stay in the long term, and it's another business. And yeah, the aim of the group is to balance those two businesses. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It's a specific to the French construction market, actually.
Mr. Hollywood, Sean Hollywood. I don't know if I pronounced your first name correctly.
Yeah,
Sean,
no, you did, Michel. Yeah. So my question is mainly for Jean-Jacques, is to do with transparency, especially on sort of contracts and P3s and DBFOs or PFIs in particular. A I work in Canada, but I've worked in the UK and the Middle East in different areas. So I've found that, you know, there's a flavor of the month sort of feel to P3s every now and again. So politicians fall in and fall out of favor with it, but mainly it's to do with transparency. How do you overcome this in Latin America with transparency, especially in your, as you highlighted about, you know, the different political arms changing quite quickly, maybe?
Well, thank you for the question. A very interesting question. But actually, we have, and actually comes, I think, from let's say Anglo-Saxon world, and especially what you have sometimes in the Pacific, New Zealand, Australia, so in the UK. What we have in our policy is the fact that we could use some kind of, you know, what we call a procurement probity auditors, or this kind of profile. We have a case that actually is not the only case, but the one we financed. We has to do with a new phase of the Metro Bogota, where the client hire actually it's an NGO and very well known NGO. To carry out, you know, the transparency of the whole process, and particularly the one that's to do with this early engagement. So that's obviously again that is something that we had to push a little bit with the client, because the client was very much you know, confident that they could do that by themselves, but they did understand that the perception is very, very important, and that transparency has to be ensured. So, and actually, this is not a firm; it's an NGO. But I know that there are firms doing that were involved very, very early on, even with, you know, things that have to do with a very, you know, general information session of those things of that sort. To me, that's something that we are pushing in the bank more and more. That's a cost also, but I think that's the price to pay for this early engagement in some sensitive projects. So thank you again for the question. But that's something that is part of the policy, actually for 10 years. It has been very, very rarely used up until now. I know that is used also by other banks in some instances. But again, for us in the Metro Bogota, this line 2 second phase, that's something that has been used and accepted by the client, and we have this NGO on board to do that. Although usually it's, I have to say that's law firms that are doing that. I mean, I know that in Australia and New Zealand, there's been a lot of law firms that were doing this kind of job.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for response.
Any other question? I cannot see any hand raised. Am I wrong? Okay, well, anyway, I think it's 4:15. We're just at the end of our planned webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember what I mentioned earlier, that the session has been recorded, and you can access it if you like on CICA's YouTube channel, together with a number of other webinars we've organized on a variety of topics. Thank you very much for attending this session, and we look forward to possibly discussing with you if there are some common topics of interest in the future. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Michel.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.